If this story hits close to home, drop a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. Mi pareja, you never miss what comes next. There's a specific kind of humiliation that doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't arrive as a slap or a shout. It arrives as a wink, easy, careless, aimed at someone who's supposed to be too polite to respond. I received exactly that kind of humiliation on a Tuesday evening in October, in a room full of investors and linen napkins, from a man who had spent years convincing himself that I was furniture. What he didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that I had spent the last 3 months building something he wouldn't see coming. My name is Nathan Calloway. I'm 52 years old, and this is the story of how I took back everything a man tried to steal while I was busy being decent. I co-founded Meridian Cloud Partners 12 years ago with a man named Craig Ellison. We built enterprise data infrastructure software, the kind of invisible machinery that large companies depend on but rarely think about. Back then, the whole operation ran out of my home office. Craig was the front of the house, the handshakes, the pitch decks, the room working. I was the back, the architecture, the code base, the systems that actually made the thing run. We formalized the split at 60-40, his name on the press releases, my fingerprints on the product. 5 years ago, my younger brother suffered a severe stroke. He was 46, he needed full-time care. My mother, who had been quietly losing herself to dementia for 2 years by then, needed management of her finances and her medical decisions. I couldn't run the engine of a growing tech company and also hold together a family that was falling apart at the same time. Craig offered me what he called an informal arrangement. Keep your equity, keep your board seat on paper, step back from operations. I was grateful. I said yes. I didn't see, not yet, that the moment I stopped showing up, he stopped thinking of me as a partner. He started thinking of me as an inconvenience with shares. My wife, Sylvia, Syl to the people who actually knew her, had been with Meridian for 7 years. She came in as a project manager, sharp and composed in a way that made chaos look manageable. Craig had promoted her fast, maybe too fast in retrospect. VP of Client Relations within 3 years, his go-to for anything that required charm, diplomacy, or a steady presence at industry dinners. She traveled with him constantly. I told myself it was professional. I told myself I trusted both of them. I told myself a lot of things that turned out to be wrong. The event that changed everything was a quarterly investor dinner at a place called the Alderton, the kind of establishment where the tablecloths are thick as winter coats and the waitstaff move like shadows. 12 people around a long table. I was seated at the far end, making conversation with a venture partner who couldn't stop mispronouncing iterative and seemed oddly proud of it. Syl was near Craig, 3 seats down, a dress I'd never seen before, hair pulled back with that particular precision she reserved for important rooms. Craig sat at the head of the table with the settled authority of a man who had long ago decided the world was organized around his comfort. Halfway through the entree, he stood up, tapped his glass. The table quieted. "Quick thing before we get back to the numbers," he said, in that frictionless baritone he deployed whenever he wanted the room to lean in. "The executive summit at the Austin Tech Conference next month. I'll be attending with Victoria here as my date for the VIP gala. She's earned it. And between us, she's considerably better company than anyone else at this table." He paused for the laughter. Got it. Then he looked down toward my end of the table, found me, and smiled the way a man smiles when he wants you to know he sees you and isn't concerned about you at all. "Nathan, you follow me on this, right? Just stay out of the way and let the people who are actually running things handle it." He winked. The room laughed again. Syl didn't look at me. She lifted her wine glass with both hands and kept her eyes on the table, which is how I knew she wasn't innocent. Innocent people look up when someone is being embarrassed beside them. Guilty people become very interested in their plates. I smiled, steady, measured, the kind of smile I've learned to keep in reserve for moments when the correct response isn't the obvious one. 4 minutes later, I excused myself, not to the restroom, out through the side corridor into the October air where the city smelled like exhaust and early autumn and I could hear my own breathing. I pulled out my phone and opened a folder I'd been building since July, not impulsively, methodically. expense reports, receipts, hotel records under his name with a companion room that was never mentioned in client files. Screenshots pulled from a shared cloud account Sil had stopped thinking about, the one attached to a family plan she'd forgotten I administered. Text exchanges, meeting notes from a consultant named Hargrove who, according to her professional profile, specialized in corporate restructuring and the quiet elimination of minority stakeholders. I read through it one more time. Then I opened my contacts and wrote a single sentence to a woman named Eleanor Pratt. The attorney Craig had terminated 3 years ago when she'd raised concerns about the company's accounting practices. She was, by all accounts, still angry about it. Eleanor, it's Nathan Calloway. I'm ready to move. Are you available tomorrow morning? I sent it, walked back inside, ordered a dessert I didn't eat, smiled at the venture partner who was now mispronouncing scalability. Nobody at that table had any idea that the quiet man at the far end had just detonated a fuse. Eleanor Pratt's office was not the kind of place that tried to impress you. A converted row house in the warehouse district, exposed brick and reclaimed oak, the kind of deliberate, understated quality that only people who don't need to show off can afford. She met me at the door at 9, coffee already brewed, 3 folders already spread across the conference table. Nathan Calloway, she said. Her handshake was direct and brief. 4 years. How's your family? Better, I said. Now let's deal with Craig Ellison. I set my leather satchel on the table and opened it. I'd color-coded the evidence. Red folder first, financial irregularities, 17 documented instances over 8 months, expense reports attributing hotel stays and private dinners to client acquisition efforts that had produced 0 corresponding clients. 2 of those dinners I had cross-referenced against restaurant reservation records. Neither had involved any clients. Both had involved Sil. Eleanor leafed through with the kind of expression a surgeon uses when reviewing someone else's operative notes. Focused, clinical, quietly impressed. The text messages, she said, pausing on a printout. The blue folder, second set. I slid it over. Those are from a shared family plan she stopped monitoring about 2 years ago. Legally accessible. My daughter helped me export them. She's studying computer science. Smart kid. Smart kid. She gets it from somewhere. Eleanor read through the messages. Several of them were operational. Craig and Seal discussing specific steps to reduce my voting influence, dilute my shares through a restructuring proposal, and eventually buy my equity at a depressed valuation using third-party projections they'd commissioned privately. And the third folder? She asked. I slid it across. Original incorporation documents. There's a provision, Section 11, subsection D, that nobody has cited in over a decade. I wrote it. Younger, more paranoid version of me thought we needed a failsafe against exactly this scenario. Eleanor read it twice, put it down, looked at me. You built in a conflict of interest clause that triggers full board review and executive suspension if it can be demonstrated that a personal relationship between a co-founder and a company officer compromised fiduciary decisions. Yes. And you have evidence that this relationship directly influenced 3 separate financial decisions resulting in misappropriated funds. 17 instances, the 3 clearest ones are flagged with orange tabs. She was quiet for a moment. Nathan, this is watertight. I know. He's going to fight hard when he realizes what's happening. Men like Craig don't go quietly. I've been waiting 5 years, I said. I've had time to think through every move he'll try to make. Desperate people are predictable. They panic, they improvise, and they leave marks. Eleanor allowed herself a small smile. One thing I want to raise. She set down her pen. Your son Marcus. He works directly under Craig, correct? Yes. Operations, 8th floor. Some of these expense reports. His signature appears on 6 of them as the attending account manager. Dinners where the client never signed. If he was aware of the nature of those meetings. He was, I said. I don't say that lightly, but I've been building toward this conversation for weeks. I paused. There's also something else you should know. While I was going through my mother's estate papers last month, I found a medical file from 1996. A specialist visit. The findings were significant. Fertility issue, a serious one. Low motility, poor morphology. Clinical recommendation against natural conception. I paused. Marcus was born in early 1997. Eleanor was still. I had a DNA test done, one of the ancestry services. Discreet, legally valid. The result was zero biological match. She absorbed this. Does Marcus know? Not yet. But when this investigation opens, he'll have to decide whose side he's on. And Syl will have to account for 28 years of silence. Eleanor closed the folders slowly and set her hands flat on the table. This isn't only a corporate case. It never was, I said. It's about making sure the people who thought they had me catalogued, quiet, grateful, out of the way, find out they catalogued the wrong man. We agreed on timing. The board meeting was already scheduled for the following Thursday, 10 o'clock. We would invoke Section 11D as the opening motion. No advance warning to Craig. Before I drove home, I made one stop. I parked in the visitor lot at Meridian Cloud Partners headquarters, a building I'd helped design the office plan for, and walked in through the front entrance. The receptionist recognized me. I told her I was dropping off documents Marcus had left at the house. She waved me through. My security badge still worked. Muscle memory carried me to the elevator, 8th floor, glass-walled corridor. Marcus was on a call when I knocked. He looked up, surprised, held up one finger. I waited outside the glass. 28 years old, well-cut suit, the confident posture of someone who had never been wrong about anything important. He looked like his mother, moved like her. I had taught him to drive in an empty parking lot at 15. I had helped him navigate differential equations junior year. I had sat 3 rows back at his college graduation in a plastic folding chair in the sun and felt something I can only describe as uncomplicated pride. I had thought he was mine without ever questioning it, until a manila folder in a filing cabinet turned that certainty to ash. He came out when the call ended. "Dad, didn't know you were coming. Thought I'd take you to lunch," I said. "You free?" He checked his monitor. "I've got a 1 o'clock. Won't take long." We walked to a place 2 blocks away. Exposed pipe, overpriced sandwiches, the kind of ambient noise that makes private conversation private by accident. He ordered. I got coffee. "I want to ask you about some expense reports," I said, once we'd settled. His expression shifted, barely, the way a door shifts on a hinge in a slight wind. "What expense reports?" "February through September. Your name appears on 6 of them as attending account manager. Client development dinners, restaurants in different parts of the city." I pulled out my phone, opened a photo, slid it across the table. July 23rd, a restaurant in the Marina District, $1,800. Your signature, Craig's signature. I called the restaurant. He looked at the photo. "Remember that in the description and in the pinned comment you have all our supplements, from fitness to health in every sense of the word." "It wasn't a client dinner," I said. "The reservation was for 4 people. You, Craig, Syl, and a woman named Hargrove. That's company business. I'm co-founder and minority stakeholder. Company business is my business." I slid another photo across. August 14th, same 4 people. "I've also seen the proposal Hargrove drafted, the one that would reduce my ownership stake to 15%, elevate Craig to supermajority control, and create a new VP equity position, which, coincidentally, would have been yours." He leaned back, arms crossed. "You haven't been around for 5 years, Dad. Craig runs the company. That's just reality. I stepped back to care for my brother and your grandmother. That's not abandonment, that's family." I kept my voice level. "While I was gone, the 3 of you developed a plan to make sure I never came back. I want to give you the chance to tell me that isn't true. Dominic said you might start making noise." He caught himself, corrected. "Craig said you'd been struggling, that you were looking for grievances. Craig told you I was struggling. He's been looking out for you. I've seen how hard he works." I stood up, left cash on the table. "Before you go back in today, Marcus, there's a medical file from 1996. In my mother's estate papers, a fertility specialist report. You should ask Syl about it." His face went still. What are you talking about? Ask her, I said, and walked out. By the time I reached the parking lot, my phone was ringing. Sill's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, got in the car, drove toward Eleanor's office. The pieces were arranged. Now it was simply a matter of letting them fall. The board convened at 10. I arrived at 9:15, early enough to watch the room assemble from a position of deliberate calm. Eleanor was already there, 2 bound copies at each seat, her laptop open to a presentation she'd built with the precision of a closing argument. The boardroom occupied the 20th floor, floor-to-ceiling glass, a view of the city's mid-rise skyline, the kind of space Craig had always used to project authority. He came in at 9:50, coffee, jacket, that specific brand of easy confidence that had been functioning as his personality for a decade. He saw me, stopped. Nathan, his tone was careful. Didn't know you'd be joining us. Still co-founder, I said. Still have board standing. Something recalculated behind his eyes. He glanced at Eleanor, then back at me. His expression hadn't reached worry yet. It was still in the territory of calculation. He sat down, set his coffee on the table, and opened the quarterly agenda as though nothing had shifted. The other board members came in, Renata Cole, sharp-eyed and methodical, our lead investor representative, Paul Kwan, CFO, who had been watching Craig's more creative accounting with the suppressed concern of a man who knew exactly what he was looking at but hadn't yet decided what to do about it, Diane Morgan, operations director with the company since year 3, and finally Caroline Hess, head of HR, who had filed 3 internal complaints about Craig's conduct toward female staff, all of which had vanished without formal response. Craig positioned himself at the head of the table. The chair he'd had custom ordered 6 months into my absence was a few inches taller than the others. I had always thought that was telling. Before we open the quarterly review, Eleanor said, standing, there's a matter requiring immediate board attention. I'm here representing Nathan Callaway in his capacity as co-founder and original signatory. We are invoking Section 11D of the Incorporation Agreement. Craig's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. Section 11D, Eleanor continued, addresses conflicts of interest arising from personal relationships between company principals and officers when those relationships can be demonstrated to have materially compromised fiduciary responsibility. She had already sent the full report to each board member's device. Phones buzzed simultaneously around the table. Renata opened her bound copy. Her expression shifted on the first page. Craig, I spoke for the first time. This documentation covers your personal relationship with Sylvia Callaway, serving as VP of Client Relations. It covers 17 instances of financial fraud tied to that relationship. And it covers a restructuring scheme designed to eliminate my equity position and transfer control to a supermajority you would personally hold. The room went still in the particular way rooms go still when everyone realizes the floor has changed beneath them. This is a setup, Craig said. His voice had dropped its collar at ease. A disgruntled co-founder who's been checked out for 5 years decides to walk back in. I didn't disappear, I said evenly. I took care of my family. There's a difference. I built this company. You've been living in a structure I designed while telling people you were the architect. What you forgot, what always gets forgotten, is that I kept the original blueprints. Paul Kwan had gone through 6 pages of the bound report. His jaw had tightened with each one. Caroline Hess was reading the hotel records. February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2 rooms reserved, 1 cancelled, both billed to client development. I can explain, Craig started. Please don't, Renata said. She looked at Eleanor. What are you requesting? Eleanor was composed. Immediate suspension of Craig Ellison's executive authority pending full investigation. Interim transfer of CEO responsibilities to Nathan Callaway as co-founding signatory. Forensic audit of all company finances for the preceding 24 months. Paul Kwan spoke without hesitation. I second that motion. Craig stood up, hands raised, something that might have been genuine panic moving through the practiced ease. You're going to take the word of a man who hasn't been in this building in 5 years. The documentation speaks, Renata said, not the word. Diane Morgan looked at Craig, then at the report, then at me. We should vote. The vote took less than 4 minutes. 4 in favor of immediate suspension. Craig abstained. It was done. He stood there with his collar up and his hands at his sides, looking at me with the specific combination of fury and disbelief that only emerges when someone realizes they have fundamentally misread a situation for years. "You're making an error," he said quietly. "No," I said, buttoning my jacket. "I'm making a correction. I want to pause here and tell you, the hardest part of that evening was not the board meeting. The board meeting was just procedure. The hardest part was what came after. Driving home, parking in the driveway, walking into a house I had built a life inside, knowing that the life was already over. Syl was in my office when I came in, sitting in my chair, phone in her hands, mascara tracked, eyes still hard. "They suspended him," she said. "The board suspended him," I corrected, "pending investigation. With 4 directors in agreement." She stood. The chair rolled back on its wheels. "You planned all of this, every piece of it." "I documented all of it," I said. "That's different. One is a conspiracy. The other is a record." "Nathan," her voice shifted, something softer trying to surface. "What Craig and I have, it's not what you're making it sound like." "Syl," I held up one hand. "I'm not doing this. I'm not sitting in a room while you describe what you and my business partner developed behind my back as something nuanced or complicated. You were together. You were helping him plan to strip me of the company I built. You chose to say nothing when he humiliated me in front of a dinner table full of investors. I'm not interested in framing." I paused. "I'm also not interested in pretending I don't know what I know about Marcus." The color left her face entirely. She sat down against the edge of the desk. "The medical file," I said. 1996. The fertility specialist. I also had a DNA panel run. No biological match. 0. Ryan. She caught herself. "Nathan, I can explain." 28 years, I said. "You let me raise that boy for 28 years. I taught him things. I was proud of him. I planned a future that included him. And you chose, every single year, to say nothing." My voice stayed level. I made sure of it. "Who is he? Was it someone before Craig? Before the company? It doesn't change the math, but I'd like to know." She started crying. "Not the controlled kind. The kind that comes apart in pieces. I was afraid," she said. "I knew you would leave." "I should have," I said quietly. "Instead, I stayed. I built everything I built. The company, the house, this life, while you were maintaining a secret that made all of it a fiction." I stepped back when she reached toward me. "Don't, we're on the other side of that." I put the prenuptial agreement on the desk between us. Section 9, Infidelity Clause, Primary Residence Retention by the Non-Offending Spouse. She looked at the document for a long time. "I need you to go tonight," I said. "I've made a reservation under your name at the Clifton Hotel. The corporate account is active until tomorrow evening. After that, you'll need your own arrangements." I'd already spoken to a divorce attorney. Eleanor had a referral. "This is my home too," she said. "Your signature is on page 11, I said. She picked up her phone, walked to the door, stopped, turned back once. "Marcus is going to hate you for this." "Maybe," I said, "but at least he'll hate me knowing the truth. That's more than you ever offered any of us." She left. I heard her on the stairs, heard drawers, heard the closet. 31 minutes later, the front door opened and shut. Then the house was still. I sat in my chair, my office, my house, and for the first time in years, the silence felt like mine. Remember that in the description and in the pinned comment, you have all our supplements, from fitness to health in every sense of the word. I didn't know about the video until 3 days later, when my daughter Clara knocked on my office door with her tablet and the particular expression she wears when something is both good and complicated at the same time. "You need to see this." The footage was shaky, shot from across the restaurant on someone's phone, grainy and slightly overexposed. The timestamp read October 15th. The audio was clear enough. Craig's voice, confident, performative, aimed at the full table. The announcement about the Austin summit, the comment about Syl being better company than anyone else. Then the turn toward my end of the table, the easy drawl, the instruction to stay out of the way and let the professionals handle it. The wink, someone had posted it to a social media account tagged as an industry gossip feed 2 weeks prior. By the time Clara showed it to me, it had been viewed over 80,000 times. The comment section had become its own document, people dissecting the arrogance of the gesture, noting Syl's silence, speculating about the man at the far end of the table who had not responded, who had simply smiled. Someone had connected it to news reports about the Meridian suspension. A technology blog had run a piece, Meridian Cloud Partners co-founder returns after years in the background, triggers fraud investigation. The piece used the phrase, the quiet architect. I didn't love that framing, but I understood it. Clara sat across from me. It's on every platform. People are on your side, Dad. 3 board members called this morning to say investor confidence is holding. The video did more for your reputation than any press release could have. My phone lit up. Eleanor, have you seen it? Don't do anything. Public opinion is already where we need it. A second message came in. My younger daughter, Sophie. Dad, can I come over tonight? I need to talk. She arrived at 7, composed herself before she knocked, the way she always did. I made tea. We sat in the living room. I talked to Mom, she said. She's at the Clifton. She says you threw her out. I asked her to leave. I said, after she confirmed 28 years of lying about Marcus's paternity and acknowledged helping Craig develop a plan to take the company from me, Sophie looked at her cup. She says it's complicated. The facts aren't complicated, I said. The emotions are. There's a difference. Marcus called me. He's furious. He thinks you destroyed her life because you couldn't handle her success. I leaned back. What do you think? She met my eyes. There was a steadiness in them I recognized. She'd had it since she was small. I watched that video 5 times. I watched Craig Ellison humiliate you in front of a room full of people, and I watched Mom sit there and say absolutely nothing. I thought about every time she came home late, every conference she attended, every time she told us we were imagining things. Her voice caught slightly. I've been lying to myself because it was easier than acknowledging what I was actually looking at. I reached across and put my hand over hers. I'm sorry you're in the middle of this. I owe Clara an apology, she said. She tried to tell me months ago. I told her she was being dramatic. She knows you love her. Sophie looked around at the family photographs still on the walls, portraits from vacations and graduations, and an ordinary Sunday afternoon someone had thought to photograph. What happens to us, to the family? Nothing changes between us, I said. You are my daughter. I raised you. Everything that matters between us is still true. Even with Marcus. Especially because of Marcus, I said. Biology is an accident. Raising someone is a decision. Marcus made his choice. You and Clara made yours. That's what defines family, not genetics. What you choose to do with the truth. She nodded slowly, then stood and put her arms around me. After she left, I sat on the back porch in the cold and understood something clearly. I had not fought loudly. I had documented quietly. I had waited until the moment was correct. Craig had wanted me to stay in the background, and I had, long enough to build something he could not dismantle. Marcus came on Saturday morning. I was in the garage when I heard his car. He walked toward me slowly, shoulders pulled in, carrying something between anger and shame. We went inside. I poured coffee. He didn't touch his. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd walked him through mathematics homework, where I'd taught him to knot a tie the morning of his first professional interview. You had no right, he said. His voice was tight. No right to go after Craig, no right to upend Mom's life, and no right to put that DNA business in front of me like a weapon. I let him continue. He had more. He used it. 5 years of my absence, Craig's stewardship, the company's growth under different leadership, my return as disruption rather than restoration. When he finished, I opened my laptop. Expense report 2471, I said. July 23rd, your signature, Craig's signature, a dinner billed to client development. I turned the screen toward him. The client never existed. The dinner was the four of you plus Hargrove. I paused. I've also seen the restructuring proposal she drafted. The one that was going to give you a VP title and meaningful equity in exchange for your cooperation in eliminating my ownership position. His jaw tightened. I work for Craig. I believed what he told me. You attended meetings where fraud was discussed and you signed documents that covered it. That's not passive. I didn't know it was illegal. You didn't ask. That's a choice. I turned the laptop to another document. There's also the matter of Pacific Gateway Solutions, a logistics vendor that received 15% handling fees from Meridian on 41 contracts over 3 years. Craig owns Pacific Gateway through a holding company. That's self-dealing, that's criminal fraud. Your signature appears on 4 of the vendor authorization forms. The confidence drained from his posture in a way I recognized. He looked, for the first time, like someone who understood the ground had changed. The investigators already have all of this, I said. You've been offered a path. Repay what can be attributed to your involvement. Resign all positions and avoid charges. But you need to choose that path before it closes. He stared at the table. Then, the DNA thing. Is that real? The report is in the blue folder on my desk if you want to see it. 0 biological match. He was quiet for a long time. She let me raise you thinking you were mine, I said. I don't say that to hurt you. I say it because it's the truth, and I think you deserve to have it. Everything else in your life, everything you believe about yourself and your family, should rest on something real. He stood up, chair scraping. You're trying to make Mom sound like a criminal. Your mother committed fraud, I said. Those aren't opinions, Marcus. Those are facts with documentation currently in the possession of a federal prosecutor. He grabbed his keys. I'm not listening to this. That's your right, I said. Before you go, your sisters chose truth. They chose family over the version of things they'd been comfortable believing. You chose Craig. You chose position and equity over integrity. Whatever follows from that choice is yours to carry. You're 28, an adult. I can't carry it for you. He looked at me with something that had passed through anger into something colder and harder to name. You're not my father, he said. No, I agreed. I'm not. But I'm the man who raised you. I chose you when I didn't have to. And that meant something to me, even if it never quite settled the same way for you. He left. The door closed hard. His car pulled away fast. I sat in the kitchen alone and waited for the loss to arrive. And it didn't. What arrived instead was relief, the kind that comes after you've stopped carrying something you should have put down years ago. 3 months later, the board reconvened for what Eleanor called the resolution session. The forensic audit was complete. The investigation had reached its findings. The reckoning had a schedule. The audit identified $2, $1 million in misappropriated company funds over 24 months, fabricated vendor payments, personal expenses reclassified as business costs, commissions to shell entities Craig controlled. Craig Ellison and Sylvia Calloway were identified as the primary architects. Marcus was cited in 12 separate instances of expense fraud, enough for criminal exposure, limited enough for a plea agreement. Repayment of $68,000, full resignation from all company positions, no charges filed. The district attorney's office was pursuing wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy charges against Craig and Syl. The exposure was significant. Their attorneys were already negotiating. I proposed a restructuring. Craig's equity reverted to the founding pool per Section 11D. I assumed full CEO responsibilities, new executive leadership drawn from outside the existing administration, a clean slate. The vote was unanimous. Afterward, I stood at the conference room window with Eleanor. 47 floors below, the city moved in its ordinary way. People, traffic, the indifferent machinery of a Tuesday afternoon. How does it feel? She asked. Like the building finally fits, I said. That evening, Clara and Sophie came for dinner. We cooked together, the 3 of us in the kitchen, moving around each other the way families do when they've decided to be a family despite the evidence that it's complicated. Midway through the meal, Sophie's phone lit up. She looked at it, then at me. Marcus, he wants to know if you'd be willing to talk. I thought about it for a moment. Tell him I'll be here when he's genuinely ready, when he's taken full responsibility. Not before, she texted, then set the phone down. He says he understands. Maybe he did. Maybe the understanding would deepen over time into something actionable. Maybe it wouldn't. Either way, I had rebuilt what was real, the company, my standing, and my relationship with two daughters who had chosen truth when it cost them something. 2 weeks after the resolution meeting, I was sitting with a client over coffee when I saw Sil across the street. She was moving in the direction of a building I didn't recognize, smaller somehow than I remembered, or maybe just without the scale she used to carry. She saw me, stopped for one beat, kept walking. I didn't call out, didn't wave, just watched her disappear into the foot traffic, the way chapters end, not dramatically, not with a speech, just with motion and distance and the simple fact the story has moved elsewhere. 8 months after the board meeting, Meridian Cloud Partners had been renamed, new executives, renewed culture, revenue up 22%, client retention at 96%. Industry publications were writing about it as a case study in corporate restoration. Craig got 4 years, federal sentencing. Sil got 3 years plus restitution. Brandon, Marcus, honored his plea agreement, paid the money back, started therapy, according to Sophie. Patricia called. Eleanor called. The morning the sentencing came through. Craig wants to send a message through his attorney. Wants to know if there's any avenue for a leniency recommendation. No, I said. Tell his attorney the answer is no. Some outcomes aren't about forgiveness, they're about consequence. That weekend was Clara's birthday. We threw a party at the house. Both daughters, a few of their friends, the particular warmth that a home generates when the people inside it have chosen to be there. Sophie pulled me aside during the evening. Marcus is still in therapy. He asked again about talking to you. I looked at my daughters, laughing together, at ease, building something new from what had come apart. When he's done the work, I said, when he's taken real responsibility, not as an apology, as a reckoning, then yes. Sophie nodded, hugged me. You did this right, she said quietly. You fought without becoming someone else. Later, after everyone had gone, I sat on the back porch with a glass of whiskey and the quiet that comes after a house has been full of good noise. My phone showed an email from the Meridian board. A procedural update, but included at the bottom was a note that the company's new logo had been finalized. My name in the letterhead, clean and straightforward. I had started this 12 years ago in a home office with a business partner I believed in and a product I knew could work. The partner had tried to erase me. The product had survived because it was built on something real, and my pareja had I. The next morning, I drove to the cemetery where my brother was buried. He'd been gone 3 years. I sat on the grass beside his stone and talked to him the way I'd always talked to him, directly, without preamble. I got it back, I said. The company, the truth, everything you would have wanted protected. The people who thought they'd walked away with it have learned otherwise. The trees moved. Somewhere nearby a bird called once and went quiet. You always told me I was too still, I said, too patient. Too willing to wait when I should have pushed back. I straightened. But you also said the still ones are the ones nobody sees coming. You were right about that. I stood, brushed the grass from my knees. Rest easy, I said. It's in good hands. Walking back to the car, I felt something settle in me that had been unsettled for a long time. Not peace exactly, more like alignment. I was doing the work I was supposed to be doing, in the company I had built, in the life I had chosen and then chosen again. Foundations built on honesty are the only ones worth standing on. Everything else is just scaffolding, and scaffolding always comes down. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment below. Tell us what hit hardest. Like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe Emma Pareja. You never miss what we put out next. We'll see you in the next one.